The first shot was fired before anyone even saw it coming. The vast blackness of space held a chilling calm as the Galactic Empire's armada entered Earth's solar system. Thousands of kilometers away, humanity had no idea what was about to unfold. The Empire had been traveling for weeks, stretching their colossal warships across the stars, each one more imposing than the last. But Earth, a blue and green speck caught in the orbit of its unassuming sun, was hardly prepared for what was about to happen. The first salvo hit the outer defenses, without warning, without provocation. Earth had no chance to defend itself. The massive cruisers, with hulls reinforced by the strongest alloys in the galaxy, fired pulse beams that tore through the vacuum, ripping apart satellites and causing their debris to tumble into oblivion. The sheer size of the invading ships alone was enough to instill a feeling of dread. But Earth didn't panic. Inside one of the gleaming human warships orbiting the planet, Admiral Rowan Kale stood, arms crossed, staring at the holographic display before him. The Empire's attack was expected. He had been preparing for this day his entire life. He turned to his communications officer. "Alert all fleets," he said calmly. "Prepare for countermeasures. All units ready to engage on my command." His voice was steady, composed. Outside the ship, the enemy's fleet loomed like an endless wall, each warship designed to instill fear with its size, weapons, and unrelenting ambition. But Rowan Kale had seen this before. Not the ships, not the tactics, but the arrogance. The Empire believed that its sheer might could crush anything in its path. They believed it so thoroughly that they didn't even think to ask if there was anything on Earth that might be capable of standing against them. They were about to learn that Earth was full of surprises. "Admiral," a voice called from across the deck. It was Captain Elise Madison, Kale's most trusted officer. Her face was lit by the glowing controls in front of her, eyes darting from one alert to the next. "We've just intercepted their transmission. They're preparing for another bombardment. Our defenses are strong, but we won't last long if we wait for them to strike again." Kale nodded, never breaking his gaze from the incoming fleet. "Activate the decoy protocols. We're not letting them hit anything important. When I give the word, we engage." Madison hesitated. "Sir, are you sure about this? They've got the firepower. You know what they're capable of. Even if we survive, the rest of the planet." He raised a hand, stopping her. "You're thinking too small. We're going to teach them what happens when you underestimate humanity." The bridge fell silent for a heartbeat as everyone felt the weight of his words. Earth might not have the firepower of the Empire, but they had something far more dangerous: ingenuity. Kale had a plan, one that relied not on brute force, but on strategy, an approach that would force the Empire to question their very understanding of war. "Engage decoys," he ordered. A moment later, dozens of human warships, previously hidden in cloaked formation, sprang to life, breaking through the shadows of nearby asteroids and comets. They were smaller, faster, more agile than the Empire's dreadnoughts, and each was equipped with state-of-the-art technology designed to confuse, mislead, and outmaneuver their invaders. As the decoy fleets burst into formation, the Empire's ships reacted with confusion. Their vast guns shifted aim, firing in bursts that disrupted the incoming decoys but failed to land any significant damage. The Empire, confident in their overwhelming firepower, had not anticipated humanity's tactics. On the Empire's command ship, a warlord watched the proceedings with a mix of disbelief and rage. "What is this? How are they resisting?" He looked at his communications officer, fury in his eyes. "Order a full-scale attack. Everything they have. I want their ships reduced to scrap." "Sir, we... now. The warlord barked. Back on Earth's side, Admiral Kale watched the battle unfold. His eyes never wavered from the Empire's movements. He had calculated every possible angle, every potential counterattack. His warships were designed for one thing: adaptability. "Deploy the disruptors," he ordered. In that moment, humanity's secret weapon unleashed. Small, seemingly insignificant ships launched from Earth's fleet, their designs far too unassuming to be noticed at first. As they neared the Empire's massive warships, they emitted a unique frequency, a signature that disrupted the very systems that powered the Empire ships. For the first time in the Empire's long history of domination, their advanced targeting systems faltered. The warlord on the flagship watched in horror as his fleet's weapons turned erratically, firing on their own ships, sending their formations into disarray. His face twisted with fury. Impossible. What is this sorcery? But on Earth, Admiral Kale simply smiled. It's not magic, he said. It's strategy. And the real fight was just beginning. The Empire was confident they had Earth cornered. That confidence was shattered within minutes. The Empire's warlords, once sure that their unmatched firepower would obliterate humanity in an instant, were now scrambling in disbelief. Their massive fleets, designed to intimidate and crush lesser civilizations, had failed to land a single meaningful blow. Instead, their attacks faltered, their ships turning in unexpected directions, and their weapons malfunctioning under the relentless barrage of human tactics. Admiral Rowan Kale stood at the bridge of the U.S.S. Providence, watching the chaos unfold before him on the holographic display. The Empire's advanced dreadnoughts, each one the size of a city, lurked in the distance, their guns primed and ready for a decisive strike. But instead of Earth's defenses crumbling as expected, the Empire's ships were disoriented and confused. "Admiral, their weapons are off target," Captain Elise Madison said, her voice steady but tinged with awe. "Our disruptors are working. They can't lock onto anything." Kale nodded, his expression unreadable. The human fleet had done exactly as planned. They had deployed decoys to confuse the enemy, but the real advantage came from the disruptor ships. These specialized vessels emitted a frequency that interfered with the Empire's weaponry, throwing off targeting systems and disabling their advanced shielding technology. The Empire had assumed that the battle would be straightforward. Earth, with its limited resources, could never hope to match the Empire's technological might. They had underestimated one thing: humanity's ability to innovate under pressure. "Target their command ship," Kale said, his voice cold and precise. The Providence began to move, a sleek destroyer of human design, far smaller and more nimble than the Empire's enormous warships. "Focus fire on their propulsion systems. Let's make sure they know they've been playing with the wrong species." With surgical precision, the human fleet moved into position, weaving in and out of the Empire's line of sight. Earth's warships, far less intimidating on the outside, were equipped with technology that allowed them to remain invisible to the enemy's sensors for brief periods. With the Empire's targeting systems malfunctioning, humanity's ships had become ghosts on the battlefield, impossible to lock onto, impossible to hit. The Empire's warlords were quick to adapt, though. Their flagship, the Might of the Empire, began to pivot, attempting to regain control of its forces. But it was too late. "Reassign targets," barked one of the Empire's commanders. "We need to take down their decoys first. All units focus fire." But even as the Empire's ships locked on to the decoys, they still couldn't land a single clean shot. The decoys were moving erratically, dodging in ways the Empire's fleets couldn't replicate. And the real human ships? They were already in the Empire's blind spots, circling behind, waiting for the right moment. "Admiral, the enemy is regrouping," Madison said, her fingers flying over the control panel. "They're forming a new battle formation, bringing reinforcements." Kale didn't flinch. The Empire had more ships, more firepower, and more resources. But they didn't have what humanity had: the ability to think on their feet, to adapt when things went wrong. The fight wasn't over, but Earth's advantage was clear. "Let them come," Kale said. "We're not done yet." The enemy fleet's reinforcements arrived soon after, towering vessels with engines that could send shockwaves through the void. Yet, as they charged toward the human fleet, they found themselves trapped in a labyrinth of debris, decoys, and sudden, unpredictable movements. The humans didn't need to destroy the Empire's ships yet. They just needed to confuse them, break their will. Suddenly, a loud blaring sound filled the bridge. A warning light flashed. "Admiral, one of their ships is breaking through the formation," Madison said, eyes widening. It's heading directly for us. They're charging up something big. Kale's eyes narrowed. The Empire had switched tactics. This ship, massive, angular, and brimming with weaponry, was aiming to deliver a fatal blow to the Providence. But Kale had anticipated this move. "Get us out of here," he ordered. The Providence shot forward, its engines roaring to life, narrowly avoiding the deadly barrage from the Empire's charging warship. As it veered to the side, the Empire's attack failed to find its mark. The human fleet was not where the Empire thought it would be. "All units, engage now," Kale commanded, and the human warships, once hidden in the shadows of asteroids and debris, launched their counteroffensive. Earth's ships cut through the Empire's forces with brutal efficiency, exploiting every weakness, every blind spot, and every hesitation in the Empire's coordination. The Empire's flagship, now exposed in the open, was hit with a barrage of concentrated fire. Their shields flickered, then failed. The dreadnought began to list, smoke billowing from the main engine ports. On the Empire's command ship, the warlord's face turned a shade of purple with fury. "They've made fools of us," he growled. "We'll crush them. Full assault. Leave no survivors." But Kale simply smiled. It wasn't over yet. He knew the Empire hadn't realized the full scope of what humanity was capable of. Earth had never played by their rules, and now they were showing the galaxy why. The Empire had no idea what they were up against. Admiral Rowan Kale watched with quiet satisfaction as the Empire's flagship, the Might of the Empire, listed in space, its engines sputtering and power systems failing. But there was no time to celebrate. The war had just shifted gears, and Earth's fleet was about to show the invaders what humanity's true weapon was: adaptability. The Empire had assumed this would be a standard military conquest. Their overwhelming numbers, superior firepower, and long-standing experience had led them to believe that Earth would be crushed beneath their heel without a second thought. But the human response had been anything but predictable. Kale and his team had turned the battlefield into a puzzle for the Empire, one they couldn't solve. "Admiral," Captain Elise Madison said, breaking the silence, "the Empire is regrouping. They're calling for reinforcements from the outer colonies. If they've learned anything, it's that we aren't an easy target." Kale turned toward the tactical display, his expression calm but focused. The Empire's relentless push had failed, but now, with reinforcements on the way, Earth's fleet would have to think fast. "They've learned a lot," Kale replied, his voice low. "But we've just begun. The next phase of the battle would not be about raw power. Earth's warships, though smaller, were faster, more flexible, and far more unpredictable than anything the Empire had ever faced. It was time to exploit that edge. "Deploy the vanguards," Kale ordered. The vanguard ships, designed to outmaneuver and disrupt large enemy formations, were humanity's answer to the Empire's heavy, lumbering warships. They were fast, equipped with stealth technology that allowed them to slip through enemy lines unnoticed, and armed with advanced EMP weapons capable of disabling critical systems from a distance. Earth didn't need to match the Empire's firepower. It needed to make sure the Empire never saw Earth's punches coming. The vanguard ships shot into position, hidden within the asteroid fields that dotted the outer reaches of the solar system. With their cloaking systems active, the Empire's massive warships were none the wiser. The reinforcements were coming, but they wouldn't be able to find humanity's hidden forces until it was too late. "Admiral, their forward scouts are picking up strange readings," the sensor officer reported. "They're trying to locate us, but they can't pinpoint the source." Kale gave a small nod. "Let them search. When they get close enough, we'll strike." And strike they did. Within minutes, the vanguard ships launched a series of precise, pinpoint attacks on the Empire's advancing fleet. EMP blasts disabled communication lines, and ion cannons knocked out shields. The Empire's reinforcements were caught off guard, unable to respond to the sudden assault. Their massive dreadnoughts, so used to commanding the battlefield with sheer force, were now reduced to sitting ducks. "Enemy vessels are losing control," one of the bridge officers reported. "They're unable to coordinate their counterattack. We've got them at our mercy." Kale didn't flinch. "Don't let up. If they're in disarray, keep them there. We need to break their command structure. As the Vanguard ships continued to wreak havoc, the Empire's command ship, the Might of the Empire, attempted to rally its forces, but it was clear that they were no longer in control of the situation. With their communication systems compromised and their reinforcements scattered, the Empire was vulnerable. We need to strike their command center now, Kale ordered. Focus everything on the flagship. As Earth's warships closed in on the flagship, the Empire's leadership struggled to regain their composure. The arrogance that had driven their initial strategy was now turning to frustration. "We've lost too much ground," one of the Empire's generals muttered, pacing the command deck. "Their tactics, it's as if they know us better than we know ourselves." Kale's smile was grim. That's exactly the point. The final assault was swift. A concentrated barrage from Earth's fleet pummeled the Empire's flagship, its defensive systems still disabled from the earlier attacks. Within moments, the flagship's shields flickered and failed, and its engines, critical to any hope of retreat, went dark. Admiral Kale watched as the Empire's once mighty fleet teetered on the brink of collapse. They had underestimated Earth's ability to adapt, to think beyond brute force. And now, the tables had turned. The fight was no longer about strength. It was about strategy, precision, and knowing your enemy. "Enemy command ship is disabled," Madison reported, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. "They're retreating. The rest of the fleet is in full disarray." Kale didn't allow himself to celebrate. Not yet. There was still work to do, still a war to win. But one thing was clear. Earth had just redefined the rules of galactic warfare, and the Empire would never look at humanity the same way again. The Empire had expected a war of attrition. Instead, they had walked into a battle of the mind. As the Empire's shattered fleet retreated, battered by humanity's unexpected ingenuity, Admiral Rowan Kale stood on the bridge of the USS Providence, staring at the swirling chaos unfolding on the tactical screen. His heart didn't race. His breathing didn't quicken. He knew what came next. The Empire would never admit defeat, not easily, at least. They were reeling, but their pride would fuel them to strike again, and they'd come back stronger. And when they did, Earth would be ready. Kale stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes narrowed as he watched the movements of the enemy ships on the screen, as if mentally planning the next steps. The Empire had never fought a war like this. They had fought battles of brute force, wars of domination. But this was different. This was a war of strategy. And Earth was playing a game they hadn't even begun to comprehend. "Captain Madison," Kale said, his voice cold and calculating. "We've won the first round, but this won't end here. We need to go on the offensive, immediately." Madison turned to him, her brow furrowed. "You're suggesting we push into their territory now? With their reinforcements on the way?" "I'm suggesting we take the fight to their doorstep before they can regroup," Kale replied. "We've already proved we're more than capable of disrupting their fleet. Now it's time to take the war to their commanders, to their heart." Madison met his gaze. She knew what that meant. The plan was risky, far riskier than anything they'd done so far. But there was no hesitation in Kale's voice. He had a vision, and now Earth's military was about to execute it. Prepare the Providence for a strike. Full speed ahead. We're going to the Empire's core. Hours later, the human fleet made its move. With the Empire's forces scattered across the solar system, Earth's ships advanced toward the heart of the Empire's war machine, its central command hub, located on a massive station at the edge of the galaxy. The Providence led the charge, flanked by a dozen smaller warships, all equipped with the latest human technology designed to disrupt and disable rather than destroy. The human fleet, moving at unthinkable speeds, entered the region of space known as the Empire's Outer Rim. It was here, deep within enemy territory, that Kale intended to cripple the Empire's ability to fight back. "Admiral, we've entered the sector," Madison reported. "The Empire's main station is dead ahead. They'll see us coming in moments." Kale's eyes glinted with quiet determination. "Let them. We've already put their leadership on the back foot. Now, we need to finish what we started. Deploy the sleeper ships." "Admiral, the sleeper ships?" Madison's confusion was apparent. "Are you sure about this? If we launch them too early." "It's time," Kale cut her off. "The sleeper ships are the final piece. They're small, undetectable by Empire sensors, and they're loaded with a new type of weapon, a signal jammer that can disable entire fleets. It's our ace in the hole." Madison stared at him for a moment before nodding. "Understood." As the human fleet moved closer to the Empire station, small, unassuming vessels began to detach from the main warships. These sleeper ships, equipped with the jammer technology, would slip past the Empire's defenses undetected and spread out across the station's network, targeting vital systems and taking down communication channels. The Empire, blissfully unaware, continued to focus its efforts on monitoring the incoming fleet. They were too confident in their size and firepower, too absorbed in preparing for a grand confrontation. But it was all a diversion. The real threat was already inside their network. As the sleeper ships deployed, Kale's fleet prepared to engage the station itself. The larger ships moved into position, but instead of launching a direct assault, they did what Earth's military did best: adapt. A barrage of decoy drones was launched, scattering across space in every direction. To the Empire's sensors, it appeared as though the entire human fleet was about to strike. But Earth's warships did not engage. Instead, they scattered. The Empire's command station, large enough to hold the Empire's elite and military leadership, was suddenly surrounded by countless targets. The Empire's response was predictable. Their defenses activated, their weapons primed for an all-out bombardment. But Earth had already anticipated this. The sleeper ships, having infiltrated the station's communication network, sent out a massive EMP pulse, frying the station's internal systems and creating a window of vulnerability. As the Empire scrambled to respond, the human fleet ships moved quickly, slipping past the station's defenses while the sleeper ships disabled critical infrastructure. The Empire's vast station was suddenly blind. Its sensors flickered, its weaponry powered down, and its communications were lost. "Now," Kale said softly, his voice full of conviction. The human fleet struck with precision, targeting the Empire's most crucial sections: the leadership quarters, the command center. Human warships launched surgical strikes designed not to destroy, but to destabilize. No massive explosions. No unnecessary casualties. Just calculated strikes aimed at forcing the Empire's leaders to face their defeat. The first wave of human fighters swept in, the Empire's stations now at their mercy. Every shot fired by the human fleet hit its mark, striking key power conduits, disabling defensive grids, and leaving the Empire's leadership in disarray. Admiral Kale's gamble had paid off. The Empire, once so confident in its ability to dominate, had been caught in a web of confusion, their command structure shattered by the very tactics they had dismissed as weak. Kale leaned back in his chair, watching the slow-motion collapse of the Empire's infrastructure. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was psychological. The Empire had learned the hardest lesson of all, that no matter how powerful you are, a smarter, more flexible opponent can defeat you without ever firing a shot. "Admiral," Madison said, her voice laced with awe, "we've done it. Their command center is completely compromised. They're done." Kale's smile was brief. "Not yet. But we're getting close." The Empire had underestimated Earth, and now it was too late to stop what had already begun. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them to one simple truth: humanity was not afraid to fight dirty. Admiral Rowan Kale stood at the helm of the U.S. Providence, his eyes locked on the Empire's remaining fleet as it regrouped in the vastness of space. The Empire's central command had crumbled, its leadership fractured, its forces scattered. But now, the Emperor himself had issued an ultimatum: complete and utter annihilation of Earth or death. The stage was set for one final battle, and Kale knew it wouldn't be easy. The Empire had learned, adapted, and they were angry. But humanity wasn't backing down. Not now. "We've hit them where it hurts, but they still have the will to fight," Kale said, turning to his officers. "We're going to finish this once and for all." Captain Elise Madison stepped forward, her face serious. They're bringing everything they have. The Emperor's flagship is moving to the front, and their new reinforcements are arriving as we speak. Kale's fingers clenched into fists. Let them. We've already shown them how we fight. Now, we'll show them how we end it. The final confrontation began with a deafening silence, the calm before a storm. The human fleet, though battered, was still intact, prepared for what was to come. The Empire's ships, massive and imposing, lined up like a wall of iron and flame, their weapons primed and ready. The Emperor had ordered one last strike to break Earth's will, and this time they weren't holding back. The might of the Empire, the Emperor's personal flagship, led the charge, its weapons powering up with a menacing hum. Kale's warships held their positions, waiting for the inevitable strike. The tension on the bridge was palpable, but Kale remained calm, his focus unbroken. Deploy the final wave, he ordered. The human fleet unleashed everything they had left, small, fast, and precise. They fired on the Empire's weakest points, exploiting every gap in their defenses. It wasn't about overwhelming firepower. It was about tactical precision, using everything Earth had learned to outmaneuver and frustrate their enemy. "Admiral, they're charging their superweapon," Madison said, her voice tight with urgency. Kale nodded, unfazed. "We expected this." The Emperor's flagship, now at the heart of the assault, began to charge up its final weapon, a devastating beam capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single blast. It was their last-ditch effort to break Earth's resolve and end the war with a single strike. But Kale had anticipated this moment for weeks. He knew how the Empire operated. "Redirect all power to the decoy fleet," Kale said, a quiet smile crossing his face. "We'll make sure they miss." The human decoy fleet, seemingly insignificant ships armed with minimal weaponry, drew the Empire's attention. The decoys moved in synchronized patterns, making it impossible for the Empire to get a clear shot. It was chaos for the Empire, trying to fire on hundreds of moving targets, while their own weapon systems struggled to lock on. In the midst of the confusion, Kale gave the order. Now, the real human fleet, hidden in the flanks of the decoy formation, surged forward. With brutal efficiency, they focused their fire on the Empire's flagship, stripping away its shields with precision-targeted shots. The Emperor's superweapon, charging for its final assault, sputtered and faltered as its power systems overloaded. "Enemy flagship's power grid is failing," the sensor officer called out. "Target the engine core," Kale ordered. "Finish this." Human warships poured fire into the heart of the might of the Empire, cutting through the weakened defenses. The flagship's shields buckled, and in a final desperate act, the Empire's commander attempted to retreat, but it was too late. The Emperor's flagship, once a symbol of imperial might, began to fragment, its core exploding in a dazzling display of fire and light. The Empire's remaining forces, seeing their final hope vanish, faltered. "They're retreating," Madison said, a breath of relief escaping her lips. Kale watched as the Empire's fleet scattered in panic. Their leaders had failed, and now their forces were in disarray. The human fleet had won. But Kale's mind remained focused. "We've won this battle," he said quietly. "But this war isn't over. Not until the Emperor himself is brought to justice." As the Empire's forces fled into the stars, the UDET-S, Providence remained anchored in space, a beacon of humanity's resolve. The Empire had underestimated them once. Now, they had learned the hardest lesson of all. Humanity was not a species to be dismissed. The Emperor had one final card to play, and it was his last mistake. After the Emperor's flagship had fallen, and the Empire's forces were in full retreat, Admiral Rowan Kale knew the battle wasn't over. The Empire's pride had been crushed, but they were a far-reaching empire with resources still scattered across the galaxy. It wasn't just their fleets that needed to be defeated, it was their leadership. Only when the Emperor himself fell would this war truly end. The Empire's command had broken, but their leadership, though shaken, had not yet fully surrendered. Deep in the heart of their territory, the Emperor was preparing his final response, a desperate attempt to rally his remaining forces and mount one last strike. Kale was ready. On the bridge of the U.S.S, Providence, Kale stood, His fingers pressed lightly against the console as he watched the movement of Empire ships. The Empire was reassembling what was left of their forces. Still, it wasn't enough. Not against Earth's resolve. "Admiral, the Emperor's personal flagship has entered our sector," Captain Elise Madison reported, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "They're gathering every remaining ship for one final assault." Cale's eyes narrowed. "And they think this will make a difference?" He paused for a moment, his voice now colder than before. "We've broken their fleets, and we'll break them once more. The Emperor's final move will be his last." Cale turned to face his crew. "Prepare the fleet. We hit them where it hurts, their leadership. Take down the Emperor's command center, and we take down the Empire." The final confrontation was drawing near. Earth's fleet, battered but far from broken, moved swiftly toward the heart of the Empire's territory, where the Emperor's flagship awaited. The human warships, sleek and fast, cut through the void like blades through silk, each ship prepared for the most important mission they would ever undertake. On the other side, the Empire's forces gathered in full force, led by their Emperor, who had sworn to wipe out humanity once and for all. But the Empire, still reeling from the earlier defeats, had no idea how much further they had underestimated their enemy. The Providence led the charge, its systems online and fully operational. Behind it, Earth's fleet followed, ready to strike the final blow to the Empire's shattered command. "Admiral, their flagship is charging weapons," Madison reported, her tone tense. "They're preparing a final assault. Full power to all systems." "Let them come," Cale said, his voice unwavering. "We've already won. They just don't know it yet." The Emperor's flagship, massive and imposing, moved toward Earth's fleet, its weapons primed for an attack that could take out entire human warships in a single shot. But Cale had learned the Empire's tactics, and he had no intention of allowing them to execute their plan. "We're moving in for the kill," Cale ordered. "Engage at full speed. Deploy the decoy fleets." Human warships broke formation and scattered across the battlefield, launching decoys that distracted the Empire's flagship and its fleet. The decoys' small, unassuming vessels raced toward the Empire's flagship, diverting its focus and drawing its weapons fire. The Empire's fleet, once so precise and organized, found itself again on the back foot. As the Empire's flagship fired at the decoys, Cale's fleet moved in from unexpected angles, flanking the larger ships and moving to cripple their most vital systems. The Empire was once again trapped in the chaos of Earth's unconventional tactics. Their arrogance had been their greatest weakness. "Now," Cale commanded, his voice cutting through the din of the battle. The Providence and its allies surged forward, their weapons blazing as they aimed directly for the heart of the Empire's command structure. It was no longer about destroying ships. It was about dismantling the Empire's will to fight. Empire warships were falling fast, their weapon systems failing as the human fleet picked apart their infrastructure. The Empire's flagship was now a target, vulnerable and struggling. Cale had planned every move carefully, knowing that the destruction of the Empire's final weapon was the key to ending the war. But the Empire's Emperor wasn't ready to give up. "We will not yield," a voice echoed through the comms from the Emperor's flagship. "Humanity's defiance ends here." The Emperor's final weapon, a colossal cannon built into the heart of his flagship, charged up for one last, devastating strike. But before the weapon could fire, the human fleet unleashed a final wave of coordinated strikes, targeting the flagship's core and its critical power systems. "We have them," Madison said, her voice full of disbelief. "The flagship shields are down. All systems are failing." Cale watched as the flagship staggered under the weight of the human assault, its weapons sputtering and faltering. "Take them down now," he ordered. The final salvo hit its mark. The Empire's flagship, once a symbol of unyielding power, exploded in a brilliant flash of light as its core detonated, sending debris scattering across the battlefield. The Emperor's fleet, shattered and leaderless, began to retreat, the once proud war machine unraveling before Earth's might. On the Providence, the crew let out a collective breath as they watched the once mighty Empire crumble. "It's over," Madison said quietly. Cale stood silently, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond the bridge. The Empire had fallen, not just through military strength, but through humanity's ingenuity, strategy, and willpower. But as Earth's fleet began to regroup, Kale knew that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength. The Empire had fallen, but others would rise, and humanity would face them all, one challenge at a time. "We're not done yet," Kale said softly, "but we've won the most important battle." And with that, humanity's place in the galaxy was secured.